a well-informed insight into the challenges facing the private equity industry today. Patient Capital is subtitled The Challenges and Promises of Long-Term Investing, and it's written by Josh Lerner, who is a professor at Harvard, very well known in private equity circles, and co-authored by Victoria Ivanisova, who is a professor of finance who helped Josh Lerner write the book. And the book was published in 2019, so it's quite topical today. What the book does is to outline what they see as the three major sets of challenges facing the private equity industry today. The first one being about measurement of performance, the second about the level of governance and knowledge of LPs, and thirdly about the behaviour and the governance of GPs. So quite a wide range of topics covered in this book. They propose two solutions which are to do with co-investments and changes in the governance structure of the GPs, but we'll come to that a little bit later. The book correctly identifies, when discussing the question of the measurement and the reporting of private equity returns, a situation where we have something like a mediocre college, where the average grade for everybody is an A-, and that's clearly unsustainable because everybody knows that there must be poor fund managers. And the book correctly identifies the weaknesses in the PME method, that is, measuring the private equity performance against a stock market index, which can be manipulated, and secondly, by using IRR as a measure of performance, because that also has deficiencies which tend to make it overstate upward returns and overstate negative returns because of the way the reinvestment rate is calculated. And so the book does a good job of laying out what are the main deficiencies in reporting and measuring performance in the private equity industry today. The book, when it's considering the challenges facing LPs today, distinguishes the different types of LPs, such as institutional investors, such as pension funds, or family offices and sovereign wealth funds, who all have slightly different ways of governance and management models among themselves. And the two issues he correctly identifies is one, the competition among LPs for access to the top GPs, and secondly, the irregularity in the governance of some of the LPs, where there may be a mismatch between the long-term value creation objective of private equity, but the more short-term and sometimes uneven governance of the LPs. When it comes to the question of the fund managers or the GPs, the book identifies three of the very important problems that exist in the market today. And the first issue is the question of the uncontrollable growth in assets under management. So as funds go to fund number 2 or 3, the assets under management keep growing, and it objectively becomes difficult for them to continue to perform the way they have until now. The second big issue is a question of management fees. Particularly with large funds over $1 billion, the management fees, the book shows, are actually a bigger reward than the carried interest, and the book correctly points out that that has to be wrong. And the third big problem the GPs face is succession problems and the orientation of the firms towards the founding partners. So as time passes and people move up the ranks, you tend to find conflicts emerging as the people who make partner and start to grow end up splitting away from the firm because the founding partners won't share the spoils or the controls in a way that's more appropriate. And these are three of the big problems affecting the industry right today. Having looked at what the three sets of main problems are in the industry, the book then goes on to suggest possible solutions. And these two solutions are basically about direct investment and about improving the governance of the fund managers. And a little bit later, I'm going to tell you how I really feel about the whole thing, and wait for it because it's a little bit colourful. The first solution is to do with going direct. So the book suggests that LPs, so pension funds and others, should step up their direct investments, either as co-investors along GPs or on their own. And the book identifies three sets of problems or challenges that need to be overcome if one is to do that successfully. The first one is to do with deal selection. So the LP has to select the right deals as opposed to, say, the GP passing off less attractive deals to them. The second is to do with compensation. LPs have to find the correct middle ground between a kind of civil service bureaucratic salary and the expansive, huge salaries of a KKR, and find some middle ground. And the Canadian pension funds are a good example of that. And then finally, the governance of the LPs has to be aligned. So the trustees have to have the stomach for the long-term investments and not end up buying at peaks and selling at troughs due to herd instinct and other non-strong professional behaviours. The second set of solutions proposed by the book concern themselves with the GPs, and some of these proposals are quite innovative. The first one is to do with flexibility in time horizons. So most funds have a time horizon typically of 7 to 8 years, and what the book proposes is there should be more flexibility on the longer end in particular. So that's one proposal. The second proposal is to do with improving the governance of the GPs. And one of the central features suggested by the book is to lower the threshold under which the GP can be terminated for pleasure by the LPs. Typically, LPAs won't allow for termination with less than a supermajority of 75 or 80%. And coupled with that, a proposal for strengthening the investment committees and the advisory boards of the GPs. The third proposal the book makes for GPs is to do with the economics. And this is something that's been discussed a lot, but this book brings it together very well. It suggests firstly that the management fees should come under more scrutiny, possibly moving towards a cost-plus basis under which the large fund managers would submit budgets to the LPs for approval. The second part of the economic proposal is to increase the hurdle rate from the current traditional 8% to a rate such as 13 or 14%, which better reflects the cost of equity. And then thirdly, to compensate for these two, the book suggests that we increase the percentage of carry from the current 20% to 30% or more. In combination, these three adjustments would have the effect of much better aligning the GP's interests with the LPs and end the practice of GPs, particularly on the large funds, getting wealthy just on management fees. So in conclusion, I'm glad he wrote the book. But I would say two things, according to my opinion. As a citizen, it really disturbs me and irritates me, this picture I have in my mind from the book of all these pension fund managers begging to be admitted into the LPs' capital of these so-called sought-after LPs. That's pathetic. That's my money or your money that they're doing that with, and that's not right. The second thing is, as a mid-cap fund manager, I kind of resent these mega funds and the way they suck the management fees out of LPs and get rich on those, whereas most of the majority of fund managers in the world, the 6,800 firms out of the 7,000 that are mid-cap funds, have to struggle to make ends meet with the fees that we have. And that really irritates me. So all in all, this book is a great book because it's really well researched, it's authoritative, it covers the issues and gives great solutions. So it's a great read for anyone working in the industry today.